Welcome to Il Salotto Sessions, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of design with leading architects, designers, and industry experts. I'm your host, Sara Seravalli, and I'm thrilled to take you on this journey through the ever-evolving landscape of design and architecture. Let me share a bit about my background. I spent 16 enriching years in Milan, the capital of design, where I was deeply involved in showrooms and events not just in Milan, but also in Paris and London. In 2011, I made a pivotal move to London when I was hired by one of the specification market's main players to establish the new showroom in Clerkenwell. In 2013, my journey brought me to Scotland, where I founded Design Pop-Up. This initiative quickly gained traction and became a cornerstone in Glasgow and Manchester's design communities, and by 2018 we also expanded to Dublin. However, as the market evolved, I decided to refocus our efforts on Scotland. This led to the birth of Il Salotto, a new venture aimed at creating a virtual and physical space for meaningful conversations and insights into the specification market. Join us as we explore trends, share bios, and uncover the stories behind the creative minds shaping our world. Hello there, and welcome to another very exciting episode of Il Salotto Session. Today, I'm here with Karen Tierney, Head of Property at Virgin Money. Big job, Karen!
Yes, hi Sarah. Yes, busy and big and diverse, which is one of the things I love about it. You know, you go from one extreme to the other as head of property. It can be very interesting.
So we had the pleasure of attending a BCO Next Gen event at your beautiful new offices in 177 Bothwell Street. Thank you very much again for having me. You very kindly showed us around, and it's about 60,000 square feet over 3 floors of office space. So big job.
Yes, it was. It was a big job, and it was fantastic. I have to say, I can say that now that we're in and done and dusted. But at the time, I think it nearly broke me. But I think from a sort of opportunity in your career, it was a phenomenal one to get the opportunity to fit out such a large scale project.
So how long have you been at Virgin Money for?
So I've worked with Virgin Money for about 15 years, but officially sort of over to the dark side, if you like. I joined them about 9 years ago. And
the new offices was a 6-year project, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I was in at the sort of early stages of some of the conversations around where we're going to go. At the time, it wasn't sort of heavily involved in that project piece at all, but obviously aware of it. And there were various locations. But yeah, we came in at the very outset of the development being discussed, and became the anchor tenant for the developer, and took a subsequent 7 floors of the building, and actually initially took 5 floors. And then over, as time progressed, we, worked through the detail, worked through our numbers of what was in our estate at the time, and colleagues on site. And we decided to take it a further 2 floors to try and accommodate. I mean, it was at times coat hooks, there was so many people in, because it was very much pre-COVID and a different world entirely, So we were going to be pushed to put everybody onto 7 floors, if I'm honest, if we were still in the old way, because with the best will in the world, that allocation of space and how people use the space and how they viewed themselves in the space was very different to what it is now, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I remember you using the expression "the gift of COVID," which is a bit controversial, but I am one of the people. There is always a silver lining, and I appreciate COVID as being a horrendous experience for so many people and traumatic. But as everything, it created a change that is not all bad.
Absolutely.
So, what has been the gift of COVID for you?
The gift, I know it is sort of like a sort of controversial term, and I use it lightly, because I think what it gave us was the opportunity to relook at how we use our space. And it gave us permission, whether we liked it or not, for people to say, right, well, actually, you all work from home now. We've proven you can. So there is no issue for, you do not need to be in the office. And that presenteeism culture was broken, because suddenly all the teams that told me they couldn't in a million years possibly work from home because they wouldn't work, it just disappeared. So that was the gift. And I do say it lightly, but from a perspective of how we look at how we work, it was a phenomenal opportunity to actually take a step back and say, right, okay, how is it we work? What do we want to achieve? How do we want to achieve it? How many people do we need in the office on a daily basis? And I had, perversely, you'll have heard us talking about a life more virgin,
Yep.
which was very much the policy that the colleague enablement teams and HR were looking at. And we had one meeting in that January of 2020, just one session. And we had all sat around the table and went, wow, okay, this is going to be really hard, really, really difficult to actually change the culture, change the mindset, and change people's behaviors. And, we were literally all sort of bracing ourselves for battle, because that's what it was going to be. And
Yep.
we knew that it was going to take years to actually achieve what we needed. And then suddenly, obviously, in that March, the impact of everybody getting sent home, and suddenly you had a different scenario altogether. And yes, initially, the challenge around getting our teams to be able to work seamlessly from home was very difficult. And the IT people were amazing at actually achieving what they achieved in such a short space of time, because it was critical. I mean, obviously, as a bank, we're critical services. So, we couldn't furlough anybody. We couldn't take time off. I don't think I've ever been so busy, actually, in my entire life as I was in COVID. And there was all these people having furlough time. And I'm like,
Yeah, so no gardening in the sunshine for you then.
No, absolutely not. It was difficult. And I think I worked off my phone for the first 6 weeks, because I had an SRAS token, they're called, which is a security token. And I had to give it up to somebody in the payments team, because they obviously needed priority access. So anyway, from that, that suddenly the whole mindset change, the whole focus change, we had an opportunity. And we knew, obviously, we were coming into this building in 177 Bothwell Street. We knew the timeline, and we were like, haha. So now we can have these sort of sensible conversations with people to say, you've proven it can work. Therefore, let's look at how we do this and how we take you on this journey, because we can't do it to you. We have to bring you with us. You can't do things to people that don't like it. People don't like change. And so we started that conversation with everybody, and that determined focus. And we had a fantastic PMO lead who was passionate about making this work. And so there was a cohort of us that worked very hard.
Yeah, I was talking to Jenny Mitchell the other day on, obviously, the podcast as well, and she was explaining how much time you actually spent in, as you say, getting your employees on board and show them what they can get by changing some of their attitudes.
Absolutely. And you were looking at a very diverse population. We had a big campus site out in Clydebank. We had our headquarters in St. Vincent Place and 51 West George Street. We also had Guildhall, where we had 7 floors as well. So we had a huge amount of space. And suddenly we were looking at consolidating everybody into these 3 floors. How on earth were we going? And nobody believed us that we could do it. And I'm like, no, this is going to work. We've proven it can work. We've seen the numbers, but we just need to take them on that journey. And it was hard. It was very difficult for people to understand, and it was disrupting for them. They get people get very unsettled if it's totally different. But I think by having that colleague enablement and those colleague conversations and bringing them with us on the journey by saying, look, this is your space. and we had boards made up to show what the space was going to look like. None of them believed me, by the way, that was actually going to look like that.
You showed us a photo of a very old-fashioned purple upholstered chairs and suspended ceilings, but the worst nightmare from the 1970s. And then you go into the most beautiful office space you ever seen with incredible views over the city.
Oh, it's glorious. And I mean, we have what we call our ops floor, which is the 10th floor, which is where the bulk of the people we were bringing in from Clydebank and from our head office, they were going to be located on. And they really took a lot of discussion, to actually articulate how this was going to improve their space and their day, that it was going to be better for them, that they would get something from it, because it's so important to get something out of your space. It's got to give you energy. It's got to give you something that you're not going to get at home. And that's very difficult to articulate to people who are reluctant to change. So we had to persevere. I did have my tour guide Brolly, as we took them on our empty floor plate tours, along with, this is going to be here and that's going to be there, and we're going to have the kitchens here and all of that. And it was fantastic, because the same sort of questions kept coming out from people, because they were nervous. How do I get here? How long is it going to take me to walk from the station? Is there an issue with, can I bring a bike in? What are we going to do about showers and all of those good things? And we had these phenomenal facilities within the building itself, but also we were trying to bring our vibrant and enable colleagues on the journey as well, to make sure that all of our colleagues were listened to, that we had the right accessibility for everybody. Everybody was considered. And anybody who had neurodiverse requirements as well, they were considered, because much and all as I quite like sitting out on a floor where there's music playing and there's a bit of buzz and everything else. It's not everybody's cup of tea. So you have to be able to be mindful that you have to offer a variety of spaces for people, as well as the sort of traditional meeting rooms and everything else, but spaces that people can disappear to and actually feel safe and not overwhelmed. And you see that with people who are regularly in the office, and they have the spaces that they feel comfortable in, and they default to them, which is fantastic. That that's the purpose of it, and it means we've done something right.
Yeah, but it's not just about neurodiversity. Even if I look at my normal day, sometimes I'm totally and utterly overwhelmed and stressed, and I need peace and quiet. Sometimes I'm just enjoying work. I'm more relaxed. I've got more energy, and therefore I quite enjoy the music. So yeah, as you say, it's about making sure everybody finds a space that is comfortable with.
Yes, absolutely. And it does depend day to day, and which way the wind's blowing, honestly. So I think we've achieved that in what we've got here. And I think my mantra, with business is you very rarely hear the positive coming back to you. Nobody really says, oh, that's great, it works. You hear the negative.
Yeah.
So, everybody's very quick at sort of moaning and saying this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And that's fine. That's human nature. But my mantra is no noise. If I don't hear anything, if there's nothing coming across my desk, or my team aren't getting bombarded, then it's a success, because then we've actually achieved what we set out to achieve, which is a phenomenal thing. And actually, we've not had that much noise. There's the occasional little thing. That's normal.
Well, you've got thousands of employees, so it's absolutely normal. There is a little bit to complain about. Otherwise, you'd be a saint or something.
Oh my goodness, that's definitely not the case. And plus, we've got, innumerable other locations around the country as well. So you're sort of trying to balance, but also you're trying to give that sort of equanimity across the estate as well, so that everybody has the same experience and the same approach to our day to day, so that it works for people. And that's can be geographically challenging, and there's cultures and there's differences, so you have to be sort of cognizant of all those things. So it is a juggling act. I do feel that you end up juggling a million and one things, and I'm slightly OCD when it comes to detail as well, as Jenny would probably tell you. So, it's always, I like to know the detail and the minutiae because it does impact. And I think with regards to design as well, how this is all kitted out, particularly in 177, it's the things that impact people that they don't realize impact them. It's the subliminal things. It's the lighting, it's the colors, it's the textures, it's the smell. It's all of these things that people aren't aware of necessarily.
Yeah.
They know it works, but they're not quite sure what's working, which is great. That really helps as well, because you can factor all those things into creating the spaces that you want for all of your colleagues to experience. And we do this out in the branch network as well, the store network.
Yeah,
We
she didn't
have
mention about your OCD, but what she mentioned is that she particularly enjoyed working with you because you were so passionate about the project. And do you think your architectural background is influenced the way you approach this project?
definitely, Sarah. Yeah, I think it really, really does. I think, having gone through the architectural training, you're aware of those nuances that not everybody's aware of, and they are the factors that do influence people. And it is about those subliminal things. Lighting is one of my things, because if it's wrong, it's really horrendous, and it can affect you in so many ways. It disquietens you, it makes people stressed, anxious, all sorts of things. Whereas if you get it right, it's phenomenal, because it can alter moods, create atmosphere, all of those things. But again, people might not necessarily know. In fact, we had case in point on the reception here in 177. The reception team, who are fabulous, they said, we were all getting headaches, and, things weren't so good. We hadn't quite got control of the lighting system, which we've now done, and it was up at 100%. So they were literally sitting
bombarded.
inside. They were overwhelmed with this intensity, but they couldn't articulate what was going on. Since we've changed it, oh my goodness, it's like night and day. So definitely having that sort of design influence and that design background allows you to be aware of the little things that will make a difference. And it's about being clever as well. We had a very tight budget for this.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. So it's about how are we going to be clever? What things can we sort of sacrifice on, and what are the things we need to splurge? For example, our task chairs, we've spent a lot of money on, because we had a myriad of issues with people with, different body heights, different, bad backs, constantly. So we had a plethora of chairs in our old building, which ruins, and it comes back to my OCD, ruins the sort of lines of everything if you've got these hundreds of varieties of chairs. But we don't have one in this building. Not one. They're all the really
replaced.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. So it's about being smart with your money, I think, as well. And that comes back to, I suppose, the design influence, and how does that impact, and how do we apply our logic to delivering spaces.
And understanding how much architecture and design can actually improve lives, a good design, as you just said, a good design chair, or a good design lighting system, or the color scheme, how much influence they've got on your well-being.
Absolutely. And I think it really, really helped deliver this. And I've done quite a few of these projects now for the bank across their different locations, and everyone's an evolution, because you're constantly learning. Nothing's ever perfect, and you sometimes have to trial and error things. But I think having that I suppose that discipline to understand that, yes, these little things are the things that make the difference. They're the kind of fundamentals. They transform the way people interact with the space, even though they don't know it. And you can manipulate. And I mean, you always come back to the old sort of McDonald's, who were brilliant at, when they first sort of brought out their sort of chains, and the colors they would use. They would use bright red, bright yellow, intense light, really hard seats, because they wanted that rapid turnover of people. People weren't aware necessarily that these things were happening to them, and there was a reason that they wanted them in and out the door quick. But it definitely impacts people. So it's been able to use those different design pieces, and and obviously tap into the great design teams that we had working on the project, and everybody having those inputs into what the outcome will be and how this will impact our colleagues.
So for this project, you work with Form, right? Who are very much specialized in office. They've done some beautiful spaces across Scotland over the last few years. So it's a very good team to work with very experienced.
Very experienced, and I think very people-centric. I mean, they'll tell you that themselves. They're a sort of people-centric led design firm, and I think they resonated with what our A Life More Virgin approach was, going to be. And I think certainly that the entire team that we took on, I think we were careful in who we worked with, because we really wanted like-minded people. I'm very much of the view that this is a collaboration. It's not a them and us situation. We're working together to achieve an outcome. And I kind of, day one, that was the sort of throwing down the gauntlet. Look, we're working together. This is not a combative environment. This is, if there are problems, there's a solution.
Yeah, we can sort it out as long as we work together.
But let's talk about it. Yeah. Let's not sweep things under the carpet, and let's not be open and transparent. And I think, that started with Form coming in and doing a phenomenal work, a bit of work with the wider business, and speaking to, of the different teams that we have, how they work, what they needed from the space, what their expectations were at the thought of having to come back into the office as well. And they produced this amazing piece of work that were literally the foundations for what we were going to deliver. And you've got to do, that's such an important piece of work, having that upfront piece where we understand the needs of the individual teams. I mean, down to, daft, little things. How much paper do we need? How much printing are we doing? How often do you get up and move about? All of these good things, but they're absolutely essential in developing and creating the spaces that need to be delivered for people. And we took a risk. The bank took a risk, very much so, on this project. I mean, I kind of gave them a hard sell to an extent, saying, we can do this. This is a change of approach. It will work. And touch wood, it has worked so far. But,
so let's go into the details of this project. So you got 3 floors, and as you explained us that evening that we had the opportunity to go around it, every floor has got a different function.
Yes, it does.
And then it welcomes a different section of your workforce.
It does. So what we've done, one sort of traditional floor, which is the 10th floor, where we have circa 364 desks. So a traditional environment. They've all got dual screens, keyboards, mice, and people can plug and play really seamlessly. And initially, it was all our operations teams with a very small amount of bookable desks. Now, our ops teams came from Clydebank, they came from head office, and a lot of people were still working from home. So there wasn't as many. But when we initially started to look at who was coming back in, it was, we've got, 30 people, for example, and we need 25 desks. Really, so we there was a lot of challenging going on, because ultimately it ended up they needed 5 desks, and that was it. But what we did was, for the first 3 months, we gave them their sort of community areas, their neighborhood areas, alongside their allocated desks. And we monitored it to see what the footfall was like, what they were using, what they actually needed. And we then managed to go from 30 bookable desks to 105 bookable desks and shrink the ops teams. So, because then they realized, the space could still be used by them. They didn't need to have that sort of ring-fenced area to the same extent, because actually the flexibility was all around them. The bookability was there. So by enhancing those services, and also the IT teams were brilliant as well, they streamlined the type of kit that was used, and everybody was given laptops, and we got rid of, in most cases, the base units that were tethering people to the desks and the numbers, because they weren't necessarily in every day, but because that was their base unit, they could only sit at that desk.
Yeah.
So by freeing that up and untethering people gave us that flexibility. So it's worked really well. And we only put 2 meeting rooms on that floor, along with 2 sort of breakout meeting areas and some stand-up sort of huddle spaces. And then on the 11th floor, we have certain teams that needed to be segregated. And then we had what we call the focus area, where there were 60 plus desks that could be booked. Again, a sort of quieter space. And it's about offering those different spaces for people to book. But we also created a collaboration area for circa 150 people with tiered seating that can be set up in different ways. So you could have large scale meetings, smaller meetings, you could have conference style, you could have team events, whatever you needed. And we also have our community hub, which is like a cafe area.
With great catering, I must say.
Great catering. They're absolutely fantastic. They really are. But that gave us a sort of different feel altogether from the 10th floor. And then 12th floor, we have that fabulous link staircase that was nearly the death of me, but we'll not even go into that.
It is stunning, though.
Oh, it's glorious. I love it. But oh my goodness me, it put years on me. But the 12th floor then is primarily meeting space with a sort of a lounge reception area, which is gorgeous. And then we also have what we call our town hall area. So this is a little bit more formal and a little bit more traditional compared to the 11th floor, which has a sort of more relaxed feel, I would say. So the idea as well, then only putting 2 meeting rooms on the 10th floor, is to say to all colleagues, remember, the entire 3 floors are yours to use. You have permission, because what we were finding, people weren't using it. We had to say, no. You can book any room you want, for whatever is fit for purpose. So there was quite a lot of communication that we sent out. We have a fantastic internal comms team. And so we worked very hard on sort of educating our colleagues that all the space was there for them to use. And there were different spaces for different times of day and different types of meetings, that you don't always need to book a meeting room to have a meeting. There's lovely little booth areas, there's quiet little nooks and crannies, there's sort of huddle tables, there's all sorts of things.
There's benches with beautiful views.
There are benches with beautiful views. Absolutely. There's also obviously the 13th floor with the running tracks. You can go and have your one-to-ones up there, which is another thing altogether. But it was about, trying to educate, and that was part of the whole colleague rollout piece. How do we educate people to use the space in a different way, but also give them permission to use all the space, because it's for everybody. There isn't that hierarchy that, you definitely can't use that. We don't have a boardroom as such, but the largest meeting room that we have, you can book that for your team. Absolutely,
And then, I remember one of the biggest rooms that you just mentioned. I remember you had some bespoke tables that you created so that nobody would interfere. If they are all looking at a screen, they can all look at the screen.
That's right. I call it my pizza slice tables, bizarrely. I'm sure there's a more appropriate term. Somebody said a vase. I think that's probably more appropriate, but I call it the pizza slice. But yes, it was to try and, obviously, teams and working from home and people in the office, that hybrid working model has caused no end of issues. And if you have a traditional rectangular table, what you have is people sitting backwards and forwards because they're trying to look around. So by creating that sort of graduated angle to the back of the room, what it does is opens up people's line of vision so that everybody can see without having to jiggle backwards forwards in their chairs. And actually, they've been phenomenally successful. Absolutely
It's a
delighted.
very simple but absolutely brilliant idea. You know, why didn't we think about this before? Listen,
No, it works.
how about this? Obviously, it's virgin, right? So bright red and a lot of energy.
Yeah.
How do you combine the color red, which is not naturally associated with calm and creativity and relax in a office space?
No, absolutely. And I think always the danger is, somebody sees virgin and they think, oh, right, flood it with red. And I think we work very closely with Form to actually develop the palette. We had already established a design manual that we used out in the store network. And we have one of the things I wanted to achieve was that recognizable space for any colleague visiting any store or any office, so that there are those, I was going to say red threads, but red threads probably the sort of the link. So there are those elements that are identifiable and recognizable and familiar, so it creates that sort of nice environment. We have only used the red in a very subtle way because it is a disquietening color, as you are well aware. It would cause chaos, I think, and the tranquility would be out the window. But we've used it, accent highlights. We've used it on some of the timber work that we've got on the walls, on the slats, just to give you those little pops. I think there's only 6 rooms on the 11th floor that actually have red furniture, and that was the only furniture that we have that is specifically red. And it works really well because they're quite enclosed types of rooms, that project rooms. They look great, but it's about the subtlety, and it's about the nod to the brand without it being overwhelming. Because I think for me, brand is very important, but so is your culture, your understanding of who you are as a business. And that does not necessarily mean we need to force it down our colleagues' necks. We can be subtle. We can be appropriate with, and they know who they're working for. And I think we worked fantastically well with our marketing teams who helped. And certainly with some of the language, that we use. We've got these little statements all around the office. So in the tea prep areas, time for a brew, and on the 10th floor, red hot meeting area, things like that. And the meeting room names are appropriately virgin as well. We've got I don't know, the pop in, and we've got the den, and we've got nook, and we've got all sorts.
I know. I really miss going down to London on a Virgin train. I think the announcements were so funny and so cheeky. I really miss that.
Yes. Yeah, I know. And we've got one of the statement pieces we've got is "Screw it, let's do it." That's very much a Virgin statement, and one of my team always makes sure she sits in that seat, so she has that as her backdrop because she loves it. She just thinks it's fantastic.
Yeah,
and it's about that. So I think you can be subtle, and you can still get the message across. You don't need to force it down people's throats, because there's nothing more annoying. And I think, what you see sometimes in some contact center environments are large floor plates where you're desperately trying to create that atmosphere. And it's an overkill, and it's really unpleasant for people. And there was a lot of, in previous locations, it was the red mist. It was just everything. The blinds were red, the columns were red, the chairs were red. You're like, oh my goodness me, that is very unpleasant to work in. So we've tried to sort of pare it back to be subtle but identifiable at the same time, because you can do both, I think, and we've done it subtly, and I think we're very pleased with the output as
I
well.
thought it was a look very sleek, and as you
Yeah.
say, tranquil. It's not a punch in your face. It's actually,
No.
yeah.
No.
Listen, when do you think this new trend of we need an office, so the office becomes a kind of a tool for talent acquisition and talent to keep the best people, is no longer anymore about just the financial package or the working
No.
condition. Is the office plays a major role in
Yes.
hiring the best people and keeping the best people. When do you think this started? Is it Google? Is it the kind of Google? No, they start putting the
I
table tennis and ping pong. Yeah.
I think those sort of businesses, I think, certainly created that trend. The Apples, the Googles, those sort of big firms, and I think they were, specifically targeting a demographic of employee, because they were the requirements they needed to fill. I do think with COVID, it changed people's view of why they would come into work. And I think it's no longer acceptable to have a very uninspiring, unenergizing environment to work in, because why would you? You can quite happily work from home, and you don't have the commute cost, and you don't have your lunch cost, etc., etc. So you have to be able to, as a business, demonstrate, look, it is worthwhile you coming into work, because actually you get a heck of a lot from it. You get energy, you get social interaction, you get to meet people, you have those, this sort of proverbial water cooler chat. But actually, it's utterly invaluable, because those are the things people learn and grow in those environments. And I think certainly for younger, graduates or people starting out in their careers, not having that opportunity to come into an office and actually learn from their peers and their mentors, etc., is absolutely imperative that we achieve that. And the hook is to get them to come into a really nice environment.
And it helps you create a community, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it just helps you as a person.
Yeah.
I think, I think everybody's different, obviously, but I think from human beings need to generally interact with other people. They need communication. And I think the pandemic heightened that awareness, because the isolation for some people was horrific,
Yeah.
and sometimes people coming into the office, they're the only people they're going to be talking to all week, will be when they're in the office, or unless they have, a Teams call. But it depends on what your role is. Sometimes people aren't on meetings all the time. I mean, I'm back-to-back meetings to talk to people all day, but it's not always the case. People in my team have very specific roles, so they're not necessarily talking and interacting with people. So actually, by offering a really nice environment to work in, tells your employees two things: that actually we value you, and we value enough to actually invest in a really lovely environment to bring you in, because we think it's worth it. But also, you're going to benefit from it. You're really going to get something from it. And if you go home and feel fabulous because you've been in that environment, and it is about energy, and it comes back to that whole piece about that subliminal influencing. There's those underlying things that people don't realize: the colors, the lighting, the sound, all of those things help give you energy, or not, as the case may be. There might be people that come in and go, oh my God, this is my worst nightmare. But at least we've given them a choice, and they've come and they've tried it, and then they can retreat back home if that's their choice. But it's about trying to hit all those different groups of people, which is a very hard task. And we're not going to achieve it for everybody, but we'll do our best to get, nearly 100% there as much as possible.
But it's very obvious that you're trying. So again, that's a very, very positive message you're getting through to your employees, Yeah, as you say, you might not get ready. You've got thousands of people to work with. So even if you get it right for the majority, then still it shows you are committed to give them the best environment, which is amazing.
Which is amazing. And I think, but it's about reciprocal respect, I think, because we as a business are looking to invest in our people. We want people to come and work with us because that's how we grow our business and keep growing our business. But equally, we value people. And we don't want you in a bland, uninspiring environment, because actually we're not going to get the best out of you, and it's about that mutual respect. Come in, we'll make it worth your while, and vice versa. So it is really, really important. And I think a lot of businesses are waking up to that fact that, yes, there was a lot of fad stuff, bean bags, I think, were a thing, which were an absolute disaster. I'd need a hoist, I have to say, to get out of when I get in, but I wouldn't get out. But I think, it's getting it right, but it's trying, and it's about taking a leap of faith. And this is where I think the business were quite brave in the design that we've gone for, because it's not a traditional bank environment, I would say.
Yeah, but then again, Virgin is not the traditional, Virgin is always more and better and cooler and fresher. And
from that, I think, we had the permission to do it, in that sense, because that's quite freeing and liberating, having that sort of approach and mantra to work in general, and, that flexibility, and, a life more Virgin gives us that, it isn't as rigid as it used to be. And then it goes back again. It's that full 360, it goes back to the first conversations pre-COVID, when we knew we were going to have an uphill battle to break through that presenteeism approach to work. And it depended on the managers, and it depended on, who was where. But, most people, as far as they were concerned, if you weren't sitting in front of me, you weren't working. So,
I lost a job because of that. When I moved up from London to Glasgow, I offered to do, work from Glasgow 3 days a week, and then be down in London for 2. They said, no chance.
Really?
But then that was 12 years ago, and it was pre-COVID. So as you say, now all my ex-colleagues are working from home.
Exactly. But it's fantastic. I mean, we have a geographically agnostic policy to hiring, which is an incredible thing, because what it allows is that dip in, nationwide talent. Which we didn't have before, which is a really good thing. And we have, as part of A Life More Virgin, our team rhythms, where everybody tries to get together, in a sort of fixed rhythm pattern through a month. And it does work. And it's
even if you look at, for example, women with young children, the fact that if you got a problem, your child is sick, you don't need to call sick from work. You can still work from home. How much do you actually gain from a little bit of flexibility?
Oh, huge amounts, because it's all about trust.
Yeah.
And it's about treating people as adults and not treating them as children. And I think businesses can, have a tendency to sort of not patronize, but actually talk down to their employees, and treat them like children rather than as adults. And it's about creating that trust, between employee and employer. And I think that's, a really, really important thing. But I think back to your point around flexibility, my goodness, when when my children were little, that would have been utterly transformational. It would have been a game changer, I think, for me, because I certainly didn't have that flexibility, not when they were little anyway.
Yeah, luckily for me, I'm a business owner, and therefore, there is some things I can't drop. Like when we have the event in Edinburgh 2 weeks ago, my daughter decided to get norovirus in the morning while I was in Edinburgh all day. So But on a
dear.
normal basis, I can drop and go get her and whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm incredibly lucky. Obviously,
Yeah.
being a self-employed and having your own business, got other stresses to deal.
Of course.
But every life is different. Every life got pro and cons. So,
Yeah.
all right, just to sum this up, obviously it's being a huge project, incredibly successful. 6 years of your life you'll never get back. So what's next for you? I mean, after you've done this, how can you do more and better? You're gonna have a lot of free time in your hands.
Well, do you know, it's funny actually. When a project of that scale ends, you have a period of come down, definitely. And I have to be honest, it did nearly break me. I think by the end of February, I was exhausted because you're living and breathing it, and there were delays, and it's the pressure, and it's about managing expectations on time and everything else. So that was good, challenging, but it was phenomenal. And the team, you feel you end up with a sort of band of family, in the team that you're with 24/7 nearly, trying to deliver this. So that was a bit of a, you were all suddenly split up and disparate. So that puts a different spin. But, at the same time, I was still trying to do my day job at the same time, which is all the other stuff. But now, I mean, I think, yeah, there's more to come. I think certainly we've got the nationwide acquisition. So that definitely puts a different light on things. And it's going to be very, very interesting, exciting over the next couple of months to see what actually transpires and how we're going to move forward, because they come across as a really positive business with very similar views and attitudes to ours, which is phenomenal. So I'm very hopeful that there's exciting things to come in the future, none of which I can share at the moment.
Okay, we can have another chat in a few months, don't worry.
Absolutely.
Right, Karen, thank you very much for your time. It was fantastic.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you, Sarah. Thanks for this.
Thank you very much for listening to Il Salotto Sessions. If you enjoyed the chat, please make sure you share with your friends and follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast. For more information on our events, please visit ilsalotto.design and designpopup.com. You can also find us on Instagram _designpopup and Il Salotto Glasgow, as well as LinkedIn. Should you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions, please do get in touch. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.